The cost of taxation. They say that in this world nothing can be certain, that is, except for death and taxes. For this presentation, I'm going to focus on taxes. In today's civilized world, everyone agrees that taxation is necessary. Taxes raise revenue for the government, which in turn benefits the public. Some examples of what our taxes pay for include roads, public education, police, programs designed to help fight poverty, and national defense. Disagreement is determining how high taxes should be, in which form they should be, and who should pay what percentage. As much good that taxes do for modern society, they also pull us further away from efficiency. This might be best explained by using an example. Let's say the town of Townsville loves their pizza. Here's the supply-demand curve for pizza in the town of Townsville, where there is no tax. The y-axis shows the prices, and the x-axis shows the quantity. The red line represents supply, and the purple line represents demand. As you can see, the equilibrium price is about $15, and the equilibrium quantity is 7. The purple triangle represents the consumer surplus. That is, the amount a buyer is willing to pay for pizza minus the amount the buyer actually pays for it. This is calculated by finding the area of the triangle. Base times height divided by 2. So in our case, consumer surplus is 45.5. The blue triangle represents producer surplus. That is, the amount a seller the amount a seller is paid minus the cost of production. This is also calculated by finding the area of the triangle. In this case, the area of the triangle also equals 45.5. So the total surplus is adding the consumer surplus to the producer surplus. In this case, the total surplus is 91. Now let's suppose the government takes notice of Townsville's love for pizza and sees it as an opportunity to raise some tax revenue. Let's say the government places a $2 tax on all pizza. What this does is places a wedge in between the consumer and producer surplus. The yellow rectangle is tax revenue. It is calculated by finding the area. So in this case, it is 6 times 2 for a total of 12. Our consumer surplus shrunk, so that will need to be recalculated. And our producer surplus shrunk, so that also needs to be recalculated. Notice the gray triangle. This is where we lose efficiency. This is what is known as deadweight loss. Anytime a good or service is taxed, it will cause a deadweight loss. This is forever lost. So adding up our total surplus, when there is a tax added, we come up with 84. Recall, prior to the tax, our total surplus was 91. Now that it is 84, we have a deadweight loss of 7. To better explain the cause of deadweight loss, please refer to this figure. Remember, tax places a wedge between consumer surplus and the producer surplus. Now, pay close attention to what happened to the equilibrium quantity. Prior to tax, the quantity demanded was more, but because of law of supply and demand, when the price goes up, in this case due to the addition of the tax, the quantity demanded goes down. Notice the deadweight loss. This gray triangle represents consumers that would have been a part of this market if the price were lower. In other words, at the equilibrium value. And it also represents the lost producers, which would have been a part of this market if the price were higher. In other words, the equilibrium value. What determines the size of the deadweight loss? The elasticity of supply and demand determine the size of the deadweight loss. Notice, the more elastic supply or demand is, the more the deadweight loss will be. The government attempts to minimize deadweight losses. However, in an economy where there are millions of firms and millions of consumers and various interpretations of elasticity, as well as constantly changing elasticity, it is very challenging to always minimize the deadweight losses that result from taxation. In conclusion, taxes are necessary in a modern, functional society. There will always be a cost for taxation. The cost is the deadweight loss, which takes us further away from efficiency. Last, elasticity of supply and demand is what determines the size of the deadweight loss. So I guess what they say is true. Nothing is certain in life except for death and taxes, including who will be taxed and how much tax will be paid.